I think the last topic that we did was about field experiment and lab experiments. So we are still under session 4. And we didn't end session 4. So this is a continuation of session 4. So today's discussion was centered on topic 2 of session 4, which is between group and within group experimental designs. So the first one is between group design. So one will ask, what is between group design? So one thing about between group design is that in most situations, we have different levels of the independent variable, and the participant or our participant, they are assigned to different levels of the independent variable. So what it simply means is that we divide our participants into several groups and assign them based on the number of levels we want for our experiment. So a common one is, let's say we want to find out the effect of music on recall. So there's an experiment that we want to do, the effect of music on recall. And the music that we are using is lyrical music. Let's say we want to use Beyonce's Halo. I know most of you have heard of that music, Halo, as the music. Our studies, we want to find out how music affects people's recall of information, and we use Beyonce's music, that's Halo, as lyrical music. Then we selected about 20 group of students to represent distance students. Then I divided the student into two groups using randomization. Right now, you know what randomization is all about. And randomly assign them to either music group or no music group. So it means that 10 of the students were assigned to music group, then 10 of the students of the other students were also assigned into what? Into no music group. Then I will test them on recall by maybe displaying some list of words to them. Afterwards, I'll task them to recall those words. So it means those in the music group, I'll first expose them to music. That's Beyonce's Hello. Hello's what? Music. Then afterwards, I'll test them on what? On the stimulus that I want. Maybe I presented about 5 words to them. Afterwards, I'll tell them to recall those words. Then those in the no music group, I wouldn't display any music, but rather I would display the stimulus. That's the words. Afterwards, I'll tell them to recall. So you could see that when it comes to this experiment, we have different groups and participants were assigned to different groups. So some of the participants were solely assigned to music, others were assigned to what? No music. Then afterwards, we would test them on the dependent variable. So my dependent variable was recall. I'll test them to recall the stimulus that were presented to them. So that's what between group, or sometimes referred to as independent measures design. That's what it is all about. So please, any question when it comes to between group, or else I'm moving on to the advantages and disadvantages. Okay. So it means that when it comes to independent measures design, every participant will have only one score. Because for the music group, for instance, they were just tested on recall, only one recall. So the stimulus or the stimuli were presented to them, then afterwards they will be tasked to recall. So they'll have only one score. The same thing applies to those in the no music group. They would also have only one score. So what are some of the advantages of between group? One key advantage is that in most situations, it reduces something known as carryover effect. Carryover effect. So my question to the class is, what is carryover effect? Who has any idea about what the carryover effect is all about? So please, if you have any clue about what carryover effect is all about, you can use the emoji to raise up your hand. Then I'll give you a, okay, Paul.
Carryover effect is a situation where the independent variable applied, or the independent variable that is used at one stage of experiment is having effects at the second level of the experiment on the participants.
Exactly. So in simple language, what it basically means is that the effect that we are testing, okay, in one condition to a large extent affects the other condition. But in between group design, the thing is, every participant is tested on only one condition. So there's no way the participant could carry over that effect on another condition, because every participant is tested on only one group or condition. So they wouldn't carry whatever information they've been tested on one condition to the other condition, because they are not there. So I would walk you through another experiment whereby carryover effect normally happens a lot. Okay. Then the next one is contrast effect. Contrast effect. Any idea about what contrast effect is all about? Any idea? Okay. So in some situations, there's a high tendency that unconsciously we might have certain biases, okay, based on our judgment in comparisons of two different things altogether. So in situations whereby we are comparing, we have two or more things at hand, there's a high tendency that we might unconsciously bias it. And when that happens, we call it contrast effect. And this normally happens in the other design that we'll be doing. Why? Because the participants, they are assigned, or they are assigned to both conditions. So there's a high tendency that, okay, if I'm exposed to the first condition and I'm moving on to the second condition, or I'm also exposed to the second condition, I might begin to compare the first condition and the second condition and find out certain faults in the two. And that could bias my responses. Or maybe the room temperature. First, I was exposed to, like, let me use the music and the no music. Here comes the case, the participants, all of them were exposed to both music and no music. In that regard, the participant that was exposed to first the music and moving on to the no music condition, he or she will begin to compare the room temperature in the first condition that he or she was. The participant will begin to compare the room temperature to find out, the first experiment that we did, the place was very, very conducive, or the room temperature was really, really okay. But this second condition looks like, okay, there's heat and so on and so forth. So it means that they'll begin to make comparisons, and that could cloud their judgment when responding to whatever task expected of them to do. But in between group design, since every participant is assigned to only one condition, they don't have that sort of opportunity or chance to make any comparisons. So it reduces the contrast effect that we are talking about. Okay, the next thing is maturation. Maturation. So please, any idea about what maturation is all about? Oh, maturation in an experiment. Any idea? Ruben?
Hello? Hello?
Oh, please go ahead, Ruben. Please unmute your mic and speak. Ruben, you haven't unmuted your mic. Okay, kindly go ahead. Wow, we could barely hear you.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
With maturation effect, we're looking at age, where we compare over a time. When, for example, when we are using maybe one group of experimenters to experiment an object for 2 or 3 years, as they grow, their idea or their contribution begins to change based on the number of experience they had with the previous experiments. So age counts, as higher you grow or as older you grow, it affects your contribution in an experiment. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So basically, maturation has to do with time. Okay, as time passes, people begin to mature or begin to have certain experience about one experiment over the other. So out of it, it affects their responses. It affects their responses. Okay. But with between group design, nothing of that sort normally happens, because since participants are just exposed to one condition, there's no way, okay, they'll be tested in another condition to affect any time frame or whatsoever. But in other experiments, it could be that, okay, the person is tested in the morning, then in the afternoon or in the evening, or maybe 2 days later, the person will be tested again. The same person will be tested again. So it affects maturation in the sense that there's a time bound. So the person could easily learn 1 or 2 things and become way, way better than the other, than previously. Or will mature, will have certain experience that previously he or she didn't have. Okay, then the last thing has to do with, it saves time. Between group design saves time in a sense that we just assign participants into different conditions. So every participant is assigned to only one condition, then we test them once and for all. So there's no way we have to come back and test the participant again, like the other experiment that we were doing. So it means that everything is straightforward. We don't come back to redo the test and all that. So it means it, to a large extent, saves a lot of time when doing it. So these are some of the advantages of between group design. These are some of the advantages. Then what will be some of the disadvantages? One major disadvantage has to do with the fact that with between group or independent measures design, always you are supposed to use large samples, large sample size, or your participants, they are supposed to be larger. And this normally happens when your population is wide. Maybe you are trying to conduct experiments among Ghanaians, or you are trying to conduct an experiment among University of Ghana students. You could see that University of Ghana students, we are a lot. So you selecting only few participants, like 5 or 10 people to represent University of Ghana, is really, really small. It means it limits the generalizability of your results. Hence, you're supposed to select a large number of people. And here comes the case, you are grouping your participants into, or you've assigned participants into several groups. You have about 2 or 3 groups. So it means every group, you're supposed to have a comfortable or a conducive number of people to represent that group. So for instance, maybe you want to test music, how music affects recall among University of Ghana students. You can't just select 15 participants and assign them into maybe 2 or 3 groups. Nope. It means you're supposed to select a large number of groups, like 100 group of individuals, and assign them into what? You're supposed to assign 100 participants or 100 individuals and assign them into about 2 or 3 groups, depending on the test that you are doing or the experiment that you are doing. So it means it makes it very, very hard for you to get some of these participants. And yet at the same time, you're supposed to use a large number of them, or else whatever findings that you are getting, you can't easily extend it to the entire University of Ghana students. Then the next thing has to do with it affects something known as individual variability, or sometimes in books they call it participant variable. The rationale is that when it comes to individual variability, people come from different backgrounds being sampled. And here comes the case, you've assigned them into different groups, like music, no music. There's a high possibility that you wouldn't get an even distribution within music and no music. Most of the participants in music, it could be that, okay, majority of them that you sampled, they've already listened to maybe that music that you'll be playing to them. Whereas those in the no music, it could be that when it comes to them, majority of them, they have not been exposed to that music that you'll be playing, that you wouldn't be playing in the first place. So does it mean that the music that's being played since they have an experience about the music being played, that is what is really having an effect on them, or it is any other thing? Or maybe the participant that you've selected in one group, they are very, very matured. Others are not matured. Hence, it is having an effect on the experiment that you are doing. So it means when you use independent measures or between subject design, there's a high tendency that the participants' backgrounds, like their age, gender, socioeconomic status, and so on, could have an effect on one group over the other, because there's no way you can make sure that the backgrounds of the participants, they are evenly spread in the various groups or conditions that you'll be using. Another issue has to do with something known as assignment bias. Assignment bias. No matter what, you'll be using random generator, or you will do randomization. But randomization wouldn't entirely make sure that assignment bias wouldn't happen. In one way or the other, since you have a lot of backgrounds of people, there's a high tendency that you wouldn't be able to do proper assignments. Well, as I said, some of the participants, their backgrounds could easily affect one group over the other, because whatever assignment method that you'll be using, it wouldn't be able to make sure that the participants are evenly spread in that regard. So there will be some sort of biases in there. Okay. So these are some of the limitations that you need to know when it comes to between subject design. So please, if you have any question for between subject design, kindly raise up your hand, or else I'm moving on to within subject design. Okay, so I assume that all of you have understood the between subject design. So I'm moving on to the within subject design. The within subject design is more or less like the entire opposite of between. Why? Because remember I said when it comes to between subject design, although you have several conditions, like music condition, no music condition. But what happens is that you divide your participants into two. Then some of the participants will be under music condition. Others, then the other participants will be under no music condition. But within subject design, all the participants, if you have 100 participants, all of them will go through the various conditions you have for that experiment. So if you have 5 conditions, all the participants that you sample will go through the 5 conditions. So let me use the same example. We are trying to find out the effect of music on recall. I have 2 conditions, no music condition, then music condition. Then I have my participants, maybe 20 of my participants. Instead of me dividing my participants into 2, which is typical of between subject design, within, all the 20 participants will go through the music and no music condition. So at the end of the study, I would have 2 individual scores, or 2 scores for each participant. So if the conditions are 5, it means that I'll have 5 scores for each participant when it comes to within subject design. Okay. So what will be some of the limitations? Sorry, what will be some of the advantages of within subject design? What do you think will be some of the advantages and disadvantages of within subject design? Please, any clue? Hello, Frida.
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Good morning. Please go ahead. Hello, Frida.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Yes. I think some of the advantages might be that it will do away with the individual variability. For instance, if you can have one participant going through all the stages of the treatment. So that age, gender, or social cultural background, variabilities might be reduced.
Good. Good. Thank you. Cynthia.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
One of the advantages would be it will save time and cost, because we are only using one group for the treatment and then the control group also. Hey, there's no control group. So we are only using one group.
Okay. Okay. Samuel, please go ahead. Hello, Samuel. Kindly unmute your mic and speak. All right. So then the next person is Gemma.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
I said, please, one of the disadvantages will be there will be a carryover effect
Why do you
because
think?
all the groups are going to go through the same condition.
Okay, thank you very much. Then Kwesi, the last but one person, Kwesi. Yeah.
I was going to talk about the carryover effects. I think someone said it already.
All right, I understand. Then Paul, the last person, Paul.
Yeah, so one of the advantages of the within research design is that any number that is required, you can easily get it. That is, you can use small number for this design as compared to the between group design.
Good, good. Thank you. Thank you. So one thing about between and within group is that I'll say you can learn the advantages. I have Zoom just alerted me. I have 10 minutes. When it cuts, kindly use the same link to join. So one trick during the examination, this is more or less like an examination trick that I'm giving you, is that you can decide to learn the advantages and disadvantages of one of these. So you can decide to learn the advantages and disadvantages of between group. Then when you get to the within group, whatever advantages that you had for between will be the disadvantage for the within group. Then whatever disadvantage that you had for between will be the advantage of what? Of within. That's the trick. So if you check the between, its disadvantages, we talk about the fact that there's what? Who remembers some of the disadvantages of between group? Some of the disadvantages. There's in the participant variability, and that will be one of the advantages of within. Because of the fact that, okay, we don't divide the participants into different groups, so there's no way individual differences found in between could have effect on what? On within subject design. Because the same participants go through all the conditions. So there's no way individual differences could affect one group over the other or one condition over the other. So that's one thing you need to know when it comes to within group. Someone kept on raising up her hand. So if you have any clarification, you want me to clarify something, okay, the person could raise up her hand. There was one lady who was raising up her hand and I lowered it. Okay. Then one key thing you should know is that one advantage of within is that it to a large extent saves time. It is an advantage, not a disadvantage. It saves time. Why? Because when you compare any independent sample design, we said in most situations, one disadvantage. Oh, sorry. It doesn't say one advantage we said about independent sample is that it saves time, but within it doesn't save time. It is time consuming in a sense that the participants, if they are 20, all the participants will go through condition 1, that's music. They'll be exposed to music. Then the same participants later will be exposed to no music. But with between subject design, you realize that we did the experiment once and for all. we just divided the participants into two. Then some of them were exposed to music, others were not exposed to no music. So it saves a lot of time when you are using between subject design. But within, since the same participant will go through all the conditions, it takes a lot of time for the experiment to be done entirely. That's one disadvantage. That's one disadvantage. Another thing about another disadvantage when it comes within subject design is the carryover effect that your colleague mentioned. The carryover effect. You remember you said with carryover effect, what happens is that in most situations, the effects on one treatment is moved to the other treatment or condition. So a typical carryover effect, we have two types of carryover effect that you need to know. We have practice effect and fatigue effect. Practice effect has to do with the fact that over time, the participants, they learn certain basics or tricks underlying one condition and move those tricks to the other condition. So they've practiced as the things that you are using to measure. So out of it, there's a high tendency that they might even do better in the second experiment. That's what we mean by practice effect. Then the fatigue effect has to do with the fact that since it takes a lot of time and energy, with time, the participant, they become tired along the way. That's what we mean by fatigue. Fatigue has to do with you being tired. And we also have something known as other effects. Other effect has to do with the sequence. Let me move on. You remember last 2 weeks when we were having discussions on this, I said we'll come back to it. So we normally say that with other effects, it has to do with the sequence of the treatment group, or how the serial position of the treatment group. A typical example is this. Let's say I want to test. Let me try and see if I can easily annotate here. Where is my annotation? Wow, I'm having difficulties annotating. Oh. Okay, I'm having difficulties doing that. So one thing you should know is that when it comes to other effects, let's say I want to test the effect of music, the same thing on recall. This time around, I have 3 conditions: lyrical condition, then relaxing. So I have lyrical music, then relaxing music, and no music. These are the key things. These are the key conditions I have. And what happens is that, let's say lyrical condition is what we've indicated A. Then relaxing condition is what we've indicated B. Then no music is what we've indicated C. And you know that within group design, all the participants will go through the 3 conditions, that's A, B, C. So since we have only one order, that's A, B, C, there's a high possibility that if all the participants are exposed to condition A, they might learn 1 or 2 tricks under condition A. So there's a high tendency they will move those tricks to condition B, and yet at the same time move those tricks under condition A and B to condition C. So that's what we mean by order effect. It means that the sequence of or the arrangement of it could be carried over. So order effect is the broad thing. Then under it, we have several of them, which is the carryover. So what happens is that for us to avoid other effects or carryover effects, we do something known as counterbalancing. Counterbalancing, meaning that we do several orders, and some of the participants are exposed to any of the orders that we've arranged. So I have 3 conditions, A, B, C. I can order it in such a way that one of the order will be that some of my participants, they would first be exposed to A, condition A, that is lyrical music, then later exposed to B, which is relaxing music. Then finally, they will be exposed to no music. It means there will be no music will be played to them. Then some of my other participants, although they will be exposed to all the 3 conditions, this time around, I wouldn't first make them be exposed to condition A, which is lyrical music, but rather they'll be exposed to relaxing music first. Then later in the day, there will be no music will be played to them. So it means they'll be exposed to condition C. Then later, they'll be exposed to lyrical music, which is condition A. Then some of the participants, they would first be exposed to no music. Then later in the day or later on, they'll be exposed to lyrical music, which is conditions A. Then finally, they'll be exposed to relaxing music, which is condition B.